The views and opinions of this program are those of the host, guests, and callers. There is substantial risk of loss in trading futures and options, which you should carefully consider prior to trading.
For over 95 years, we've set the bar. Power, we restored it. Protection, we reinvented it. Record yields, we redefined it. If there's one thing we know at FS, it's that just because something hasn't been done, doesn't mean it can't be done. We're never satisfied unless we take your farming operation to the next level. Run your equipment at peak efficiency and bust the bins this season. Visit fssystem.com.
Well, it's definitely a tale of money flow in, money flow out in the grain and oilseed trade on Monday. Money flowed into soybeans. Very strong day there. Money flowed out of wheat, led by losses in really all three complexes, and then corn just largely stuck in the middle. Let's talk about things. Joining us now to provide market analysis here on the show, John Heimberg with Total Farm Marketing. John, good to catch up with you again. Hope you had a great weekend and fairly interesting trade action in the grains and oilseeds coming back off the weekend. And let's start with soybeans. Sounded like that weather forecast in South America back here as a kind of a driver and was the main reasoning that I saw anyway, that soybeans pushed their way aggressively higher on Monday.
Yeah, real good start to the week in the soybean market there, 30 plus cents higher in those front month contracts. And, probably just a couple news items in there. First off, let's just go back to the USDA report, basically a can kick down the road there in the bean market. And then we did see some movement, at least in terms of the South American or the Brazilian crop, even though that was kind of muted because they added 2 million metric tons to last year's harvest and then took 2 million metric tons off of this year's harvest. So net was zero, in that regard. But then, we get into the day today. We first off watched some of those weather forecasts, new weather models coming out, drier conditions maybe across those Brazilian plains. Maybe the temperature's starting to kick back in again a little bit. They moderated there. So I think that brought some weather premium into the market. And we continue to see solid export demand. Another sale came in today. Unknown Destinations picking up some more beans. It was a little late on the announcement, but it got out there this morning. So we're seeing that activity, the combination of those things. The funds kind of squared up their positions a little bit going into that report. Now they're just kind of pushing the money back into the long side of this thing and add some weather premium. I'm really impressed by the close today, getting above Friday's high. I was kind of watching this kind of line you can just magically draw around 335 or 1335. We crossed over that and on the close today. So things look a little bit optimistic there. So we'll have to see if we can get some follow through here in the next few days. Maybe take this thing back up to the top of the range.
I was going to say, thinking about some of that follow through, one has to wonder, I think we sold quite a bit of beans, John, here in the U.S. So if there are any remaining beans out there, I mean, is it at the point where we're thinking it's gambling bushels, so to speak, here, and we'll just have to wait and see if we have more follow through and push this thing higher? What do you think about that?
There's still some more beans out there. I actually fielded a few calls today of guys kind of waiting for $13, and that in terms of the cash price with the basis, and so that's going to be a headwind that's overtopped this market. And I think the most of the producers are fairly aware or understand that. Even with the weather and the Argentina crop coming back online, we're going to have a fairly large supply of beans, if not even a record supply of beans coming out of those South American countries. That's going to come into play this spring, and maybe not to be too attached to the bushels here, and take the win if we get a good number. We've got a lot of things going in terms of moving parts going into next year that can take time, but here's some opportunities maybe to get some additional bushels sold. So that could be a little bit of a headwind as we get further up in price. That when we start seeing $13 cash pop into some regions, that's probably going to get that bin door open a little bit in that regard. So, but the other plus side, you look at meal today, oil today, good move in the products. That's been really disappointing last couple of weeks. Crush margins improve with that today too. So that also just adds, we still got to keep in mind that domestic supplies are still are tight. And if the export market stays, continues to stay friendly, at least in this window, we still got a lot of beans that we need to move. That's going to keep those crushers bidding up. And they're still going to be looking for supplies, and that keeps this market supported. Now, the concern will be later on into 2024 when we get into that February, March, April, May window. You already see the bids are out there for South American beans, significantly below our beans. We're going to get through that export window that we're kind of in right now. That's going to come close. Then what happens to price? So I'm looking at put strategies. If guys are going to hold beans in the bin into the summer, wait for a pullback. The last couple of years, it's been around that end of 1st of May window. That's your window to get your calls in and re-own anything that you do sell in this time frame.
I know the wheat trade sharply lower in Chicago, KC, and Minneapolis wheat, and that kind of pulled on the corn market, and corn really didn't know which way to go on Monday. In terms of corn, before we talk about wheat, it just, we saw the USDA report Friday. I mean, I know we got that cut to exports, but at the end of the day, John, we still just got a lot of corn out here, and I feel like that's going to be the big weight on this U.S. corn market here as we work into 2024. What do you think?
Oh, very much so. Even with that 25 million bushels going back into the demand side of the balance sheet, bringing carryover down here on the last report, that was a little bit on the friendly side. But then let's step back and look at the big picture. You look at that stocks to use 14.7, but current number at this time frame. That's back to 2015, 16, 17 levels. And, if you go back and look at charts, where were prices in that time frame? So, that just tells us that the market feels like maybe corn prices need to come down. We saw the selling pressure today being obviously led by the wheat, even with beans rallying 30 cents. Corn just couldn't get a bid under it today. Fairly weak close in terms of money flow of the day. So we'll see how that kind of plays out. Kind of feels like we got a better chance of getting back down and testing that 460 level than we do back to $5 here, at least in terms of momentum. Biggest thing, again, end of the year, we watch what the funds are doing and what they're doing with the money flow. They shave 45,000 short contracts off. Now, to me, that's fairly disappointing when you look at the rally. What was it, 20, 25 cents off the low in that window, where they shaved much less off of the wheat market and we rallied 90, in that regard. So here that gives them more ammunition again to just push this thing to the downside until they have a reason to get this thing to turn around and put money on the other side of the coin. And right now, I don't see that yet. Export inspections today, a little bit disappointing, lower end of the scale. We're not in our corn export window, even though we've been seeing the sales pick up a little bit more. Typically, that bean window closes. I've said 1st of the year, corn opens up. But then we just still got to look at the longer term story. And really, the Brazil weather is not a major corn player story yet. It's all about the beans, the planting pace where we are. But eventually we're going to shift that over and see how many acres we get out down there. What's the planting time window? How's that relate? That could be more of a summer story. Late spring is where we get some more demand to kick back in. So I think right now, at least as we got a lot of corn we're working through, and I would, right now I feel like we got that January WASDE report or crop production report coming, just talking to people in some areas. It wouldn't surprise me the USDA had another bushel per acre on the yield and bump up the supply pile a little bit more at the year-end report too. So, those things I think the market's trying to price in here, and it's going to be very difficult for the corn market to rally unless something breaks out on the news front, that really can make them feel uncomfortable. But right at this time frame, I'm not seeing it.
And to add to your point there, I feel like about the only thing that could move some corn out of the bin here before the end of the year or even the beginning of January is going to probably take some regional basis pops, I think, at this point, unless we see some significant black swan event that drives this corn market higher. I don't see it. I just feel like it's going to have to come down to some of those regional basis offers, isn't it, John?
Very much so. It could be one of those situations with the futures market, cash market, find a little divergence from each other. The money doesn't want to buy it on the board, but we're going to see those windows where, hey, we need supplies. They're going to pop the basis, get the bin doors to open up a little bit here. Now, right now, I think things are going to be pretty closed until we get to the 1st of the year anyway, given the calendar. And then I'm a little concerned. I mean, look what happened last year. The first couple trading days of the year, we sold off really hard. Sensing that being kind of maybe a play this year as well, as a lot of guys are pushing money back, sales back until the 1st of the year, and then they're going to move those bushels out, whether to cover inputs, taxes, whatever payments, whatever they got to take care of. I think we're going to see that corn move pretty aggressively, and then be careful around those first notice days, at least here in these front months. Just feels like there's a lot of basis contracts still floating around out there. We saw what happened at the end of December with the hard sell-off there. That could be a play as we get closer to that first notice day window in the March contract. Right now it's a seller's market. You got 20 cents a carry from December to March. We lost a carry from September to December. Right now that feels like the play could be the exact same way as we move further into 24, and we see that carry continue to bleed out. So I'm staying defensive, especially if producers are holding bushels in the bin. Let's protect the $5 level best we can with some of those put strategies out in May and July.
We are talking today with John Heinberg from Total Farm Marketing here on the program. John, the wheat market, outside of just saying wheat was doing wheat things on Monday, any other notes that you saw in terms of some of that downside pressure? Was it profit taking? Did I miss a news headline? I mean, your thoughts in the overall selling pressure in wheat on Monday?
Sometimes you need corrections in an up market, so we'll see if this one was limited to one day. The 10-day moving average was around that 609, 610 area in the March. We fell back to that today and at least held that, even though that was 22 off the high for the day. The biggest thing is I'm looking at 100-day moving average. We closed back underneath there. Maybe we just got this thing a little too far too soon. Watching global wheat prices, the U.S. still needs to stay competitive. And we didn't get another sale today. We've been watching China step in. They picked up about 1.9 million metric tons of U.S. wheat, which is a very large set of purchases for the last, basically decade. And in that regard, that wasn't there today. So it just gave the market a little more momentum as it kind of broke. Wheat's a volatile market. We see that in the value of the options and the strategies around it. There's a lot of cost to those options, tells you the volatility is still very high. And I think today was just a case of it. Now, the key will be, do we turn around? Do we find some footing? Or does this thing go pull all the way back another 20 cents or so, before we really find some good technical support, back down that $6 handle or lower?
Let's talk about the livestock trade and cattle first. I know I was trying to watch closely the latest CFTC report, where funds stood in both the live and feeder cattle market here after Friday, and getting into this week, a decent up day in cattle trade. Your thoughts on just where the funds are kind of sitting at right now, because it feels like they've really been a big driver of a lot of this downturn of volatility in the cattle market, John.
Very much so, and it's just been something we've seen, basically a free fall in that long position. Funds are sitting a little over 27,000 long contracts. That's their lowest net long for the year in this area. Just considering we were midsummer, early fall, pushing well over the $100,000 contract point. So that was probably a big trigger, was the money flow out of this. It was led by just a few fundamentals that got a little bit concerning, and we saw some of them kind of walk apart here the last couple of days. Cash trending lower, retail values breaking under the 290 level. Now we snapped back very nicely today on the retail values. I think that helped with the recovery. You got 2 days of up trade here now in the live cattle market, hitting some seasonal windows where we typically see some money flow into the cattle market as well into the end of the year. So maybe it's a good spot. We see some price recovery. Still don't think we're out of the woods yet, just because of some of the perceptions and sentiment out there. I'm not going to say that it doesn't help. We got that COP20 conference going on right now too, and there's a lot of negative headlines coming out of there about animal agriculture. I think that was some of the selling that came into play, as well as just concerns on maybe long-term demand. We'll have to see. Obviously those are things down the road we'll have to worry about, but it's out there and it's headlines and it's stuff that that the computers and the algos, they trade off of. And I think that may have been some of the issues here this week as well. So we'll have to see how the rest of the week goes. At least so far today and on Friday, nice recovery in those markets. So we'll again watch how things go this week. Where's cash trade go? How do those retail values go? And watching that going forward.
And I know you and I were chatting as well before we got on the air, just looking at some of those retails and more on the cattle side. Monday looked pretty good. Box beef showed some small gains early on Monday. So, some positive notes on that front as well in terms of the cattle market to start the week, John.
Yeah, it's good to see a nice little bid come in today. Combination of things going on here too in that retail space. We're at the end of the year here, and not a lot of retailers want a whole lot of inventory, with the year-end numbers coming at them here. So that might be some of the reason we see some softness, and we get into next year, you'll see those bids start kicking back in again. Maybe they're even kicking in now with delivery of that product in 2024, So I think that comes into play here as well. But again, it's a seasonal window where maybe some of the demand's a little bit softer. And we'll see how things start going as we move into the spring next year.
How about that hog market, John? Taking a look at things there. Seeing on Monday's trade a little bit lower. This hog market just continues to kind of be a dog, so to speak. Any thoughts in the hog trade to start the week?
It's right to that cash index and the trend there. You're looking at $68 cash index down another 36 cents today, a couple bucks lower last week. It's just in a free fall slide here as we've been moving into the end of the year. And that still continues to weigh on this hog market. Now, again, tough day in the February contract, big outside day to the downside. So it just feels like the sellers are in control here. The funds are short, and they're pushing that short position in the hog market. Feels like at least that test of that 66 low coming. Maybe we'll find some footing there again. But again, it's just that time of year. We're just not seeing what we need in the fundamentals, especially that cash market, that possibly can get this market to get some footing. I think cash has to turn first before we truly see the hog market start getting on the climb again.
See a little green in the dairy parlor on Monday, mainly Class 3 milk futures, John. Any notes in the dairy trade to start the week?
Well, it's proven again, you get a spike in the dairy market, it turns into a quick selling opportunity. And, that's 3 of them now where we basically, within a matter of 2-3 days after we hit those highs, we're quickly back through the low that we took off from. Milk market, maybe we got a double bottom forming on the bottom of these contracts. USDA came out, lowered their milk projection numbers on that UASI report on Friday. Still feels like we're on a slippery slope, but I look at the summer months and the spring and we're 17 pushing 18. Trading now 1640 here. This makes me feel like this market's still in a downward slide. Block and barrel prices, again, still not maybe where we need them to keep this market supported. Same with butter prices have really come down. I'm not a very big fan of the milk market at this time frame, at least from the fundamentals I'm seeing. But hopefully we can find some footing here for the dairy producer. But again, when you get those nice little pops or rallies, definitely make sure that's an opportunity to protect yourself in some form or fashion.
John, before we wrap it up, any final thoughts for us here today?
Trade gets a little more difficult at this time of the year because of the lack of players and, end of year covering and whatever they're doing. So just be on your guard, set your targets and wait for them to hit. Just had those conversations with guys about soybeans today. Just make sure we're active here, okay? Because you might have a one-day opportunity that came and gone, in this type of a market. So, but the biggest thing is keep an eye on those future prices for next year, especially in the grains. There's still some good numbers on the board. We're looking at supplies still possibly getting bigger. You can't sit there and count on weather to be your savior. If you got opportunity now to lock in a little bit of game for 24 when you're buying your inputs, make sure we're doing it. That's one thing I've been really talking to people about. There's always ways to re-own it. There's always different plans to go. But the biggest thing is make sure at least, lock in a couple of the base hits if we get a chance to get those versus always trying to get a home run.
John, if folks have questions, I know they can reach out to you there at Total Farm Marketing, phone, email, website, a lot of great ways to get in touch. How can they reach you?
Sure, love chat with them anytime. Give me a call, 800-334-9779. Shoot me an email at jonh@totalfarmmarketing.com. And that website of ours, totalfarmmarketing.com. A lot of great information. Love to chat with you. Feel free to give me a call, even if you just got a couple questions about what we do, what we're thinking about. Just love to have that conversation and introduce myself.
With that, John Heimberg, Total Farm Marketing. Always good to catch up with you, my friend. Have a great week, and we will talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Have a great week.
That's going to do it for Market Talk today. Find us at markettalkag.com. I'm Jesse Allen. Have a great afternoon.